Hey, welcome. Today I'm going to show you how I do more anime style cell shading in Procreate, because it's actually super easy to get a good effect. We're going to do it on this skirt here. I'm doing this DTIYS entry that's a much more classic anime illustration style. So I figured I'd show you how I do this because it works really well on the skirts especially. So here we go. So I'm going to take my lasso tool. We got this problem again. Okay, so I take the base color of the skirt, a little bit more saturated, a bit darker, and in my mind this is going to be almost the darkest. So then we're just going to go in and lasso. Here we're going to make it a little bit darker, a little more saturated. Doing like a mostly top-down kind of generic lighting, nothing fancy here. Just so that it's pretty easy to figure out where all the shadows would be falling. And the nice thing about this is it's so easy to correct anything later. It's very non-committal. And we are on one layer here. So if you're not confident, don't worry. You can do multiple layers just with the clipping mask. So we're just going in, lassoing all at once. It's very important for me to feel comfortable with this technique is to zoom in and lasso all of this stuff at once before I zoom back out and look at it. This is like a little crease that would get some shadow. This is all going to be in shadow. It's all under her legs here. And actually I'm going to do a big swoop down. Obviously that's out of the lines, so I'm going to turn off color fill, open my layers, turn on alpha lock, long press on the select tool again so I get my menu without losing my selection. Then I'm going to hit color fill again and you'll see it's within the lines because I did not alpha lock the layer first. And that makes it easier to do those big sections like that. So I'm going to unpress it, zoom out. So suddenly you see I got a pretty effective top-down shading situation going on here. I'm going to say this comes forward more than that shows. Just going to do like an angle right there. And that angle is because I'm just suggesting that this surface here isn't completely flat. I'm going to have some variation, and I'm really just making stuff up. And that's what you get to do with this style. It's great. Okay, so we're going to go back in. That's going to get that shading. This section here is obviously bent away. That's going to get that. I'll end up doing like 4 or 5 shades, I want to say. And for this style, you know, I keep it within the same color. I'm not really doing the extra fancy stuff, at least not for this skirt. And you'll see that it still gets a pretty interesting effect without really doing anything fancy. So it's very easy to grasp. Okay, so that's going to be it right now for that initial darks. So then what I'm going to do is my second shade. So I go to the lightest point currently, which is the base layer. I'm going to go down a little darker and a little more saturated, but it's much more subtle than that initial layer. Now I'm going to block in my large shadow shapes that I think might exist on here that aren't the darkest. They're just that slight difference in where the face of the fabric is actually pointing in terms of the light source. So because her skirt is puffed out at the top a bit because the belt sucks it in, you're going to have this bit of a overhang. Very slight though, it's super subtle. So then here the skirt would be folding in to all kind of point in to where the legs come together. So we're going to have a bit of a shadow shape there like that. We'll do another one here. Maybe like this. I'm really just making stuff up. I mean, there's some logic to it, sure, but I'm not putting too much thought into it. The shapes, I'm just doing some angles to keep it interesting. It's nothing wild. And that's what's so fun about this style. And that's why it took me so long to really get the hang of it, is because it really is just nonsense derived from logic, and I had a hard time making that jump. So now zoom out. Okay. I mean, you could easily stop here, you know, if you wanted. This is 3-tone cell shading, pretty common, super common, especially within animation. I'm going to do a little bit more. And the more you do and the way you do it, you can determine if something's a little shinier or not. Generally, this style leans towards a shinier fabric. And somehow it works. You know, your brain just accepts it even when you know it's not a shiny fabric. Okay, so now we're doing a little bit darker. We're going to come in on the edge of some of these. Like so. And this is this style's version of the Terminator, that darker edge of your shadows, which is really the shadow before bounced light comes into effect. And I'm just kind of deciding here where I'd put some extra shadow just to break up these larger sections. Throw in a little bit of shadow here for these creases. Maybe a little bit right here. Okay, that's good. So now from here, I'm going to go darker. This is when I want to try to find my darkest dark for this style. So get it a bit darker. Now notice this is basically like 50% darkness, so not very dark. That's another thing that's obviously very different from reality. This darkness represents your exclusion shadows, where the light's not really getting there much, if at all. But the thing with anime illustration is that's where your lines come into play. That's where your line weight is very effective. You know, right here, there's a bit of a darker section of line there that represents that true exclusion shadow. So you get that from your lines, not from your shadow shapes. And sorry if this is a longer video. I'm probably only going to make longer videos because it's really important that people, especially starting out, understand how long things actually take. One of my biggest problems in art was growing up watching speed paint videos, because that was the big new thing 100 years ago. And my brain knows it's a sped up video, but when I go to draw, you start drawing faster because that's how you're thinking it goes. That's you teaching your brain that it goes that quickly. And so as cool as speed paints are, when you're learning, they're not good. You got to really focus on this idea of slowing down, taking as long as you possibly need to make the picture you want, and then speed will come with time. Okay, so I got those, and I might even make some stuff darker here, but that's what's fun about this, is I just make the shapes, zoom out, see how I feel. So this section here, actually, I want this whole section to be a bit darker. And then I'm going to make a darker darkest. For that. A lot of corner action there. I'm going to leave the other darkests for now, but I am going to put this in here. Just because these are really harsh folds that would really exclude a lot of light. Okay. We're almost done, to be honest with you. So now we're going to do some reflective lights. So I'm going to take this shadow color, the initial color we used. I'm going to go the slightest bit lighter and less saturated, but it's very subtle. And here it's important to keep your selections selected the whole time, and you'll see why. So we're basically just, without touching the edge of these shadows, we're just adding in this new slightly lighter color here. So this ends up giving us some terminators by not going to the edge, and suggesting that there's light bouncing around down here. Her skin is obviously lighter than the skirt, and so it's gonna put off its own bit of light. But we don't want it to be too bright, because eventually you would end up shading the skin, so it wouldn't be this bright. So you want this to be a very subtle effect. And I'm basically doing it on all of these under ones. I might try it here. No, that's too light. So I'm going to undo that one. So now I'm out here. I'm going to deselect. Look here. Okay. That's looking pretty good. So the only thing I might do here on this one, I definitely could be done right now. I think it looks good. But I'm going to actually do a super slightly lighter than the base color to act as my highlights. With this, you just got to be careful, because a slightly brighter color here can really start to make it look too shiny. Which, again, if that's what you're going for, then go for it. So, for instance, if I wanted this to be really shiny, where this edge is, I would, on the right side here, I would do that shiny new light color there. That's, a huge effect that you would put on like leather. So we're just saying this is areas that are facing upwards just a bit more than the rest towards that light source. We're going to put it on this top ridge a bit here too, because A, light source, and B, you got some light color items up here that could also be bouncing some light. Give this ridge a bit of this light color. Right here. Maybe a little bit here. And then here. And the reason I'm not doing this corner, even though it's definitely facing up, is just because it's getting closer to this sleeve. And while I feel like it's inaccurate, it's going to have an interesting effect that gives an idea of just some shadow being cast a little bit because of that sleeve. Okay. So, there you go. I mean, that's it. That's kind of your classic cell shading. It's usually a little more complex and still illustrations than you think compared to animation, and so it's actually easy to make it too simple. But when you add in these shapes, I haven't done any blending, nothing like that, just cell shading, and it works pretty well. I think the only thing I might want is to make some of these a tiny bit brighter, just where they really touch up to the skin there. Actually, that one there is not in shadow at all. And when I zoom out, I can barely tell that's there. And that's kind of important. These super subtle differences are very important and very common in real life. Real life is simultaneously the most detailed and complex things imaginable, but also with immense subtlety. And so that's important. That's kind of why I do this the way I do, with these slight changes in color each time. Okay, so that's it. You're done. So you can get yourself a flat color skirt or something and your lasso tool, and just play around with some shades and figure out how you want to do it. And that's probably the easiest technique that I use, but also potentially the most effective, and I actually really like how it turns out. So hopefully it works out for you, and thank you for watching.